So let's talk about the Washington Wizards. This is a team that I predicted to be, I believe, the third seed in the Eastern Conference, and they could still get there. And this is a team that was talking a lot this offseason, talking about how the Cavaliers were scared of them and they didn't want to play them in the conference finals and whatever the hell else. And they're a talented team, but as of right now, the Wiz are 6-5. And at times this season, they've looked really good, and at other times, they've looked really bad. And the thing is that some of those times that they've looked bad, they've been against teams where they should not be losing, right? Like, they lost to the Lakers, they lost to the Suns, they lost to the Mavericks. These are teams that the Wizards should be beating. And I think there's a few reasons why we can say why the Wiz have been a little slow to start. Number one, Markieff Morris has been hurt, and he was a positive player for them last season. Even if I don't think super highly of Markieff, I do recognize that there are things he can do well. He can hit an open shot, he has some ability off the bounce. If you get him motivated, he's not a bad defensive player. So to have that one extra guy who's at least a decent enough player, that can hurt you a little bit. It has unlocked the Kelly Oubre at power forward lineup, which has been fantastic for them, which I'll dive into. But still, Morris, I think overall he's a positive player for this team, and they have not had him. But besides that, their defense has sucked, and Scott Brooks' lineups still aggravate the hell out of me. Let's start with the defense. The one game that I saw from them this season, where I really locked in and focused, was the game against the Mavericks. And they really disappointed me in that one because it seemed like their defense, I don't want to say it was lazy, but it was definitely not good because they were getting beat on really simple sets by Dallas where it was just like Harrison Barnes elevator action and they couldn't get around the double screen and Harrison Barnes had a wide open three at the top of the key. There were a couple of the times where there were small little flare screens for Wesley Matthews, or I think JJ Barea had one as well, where they're those little ones that the Warriors run all the time where they only take 4 or 5 seconds off the clock, and they were getting beat on those consistently. Dallas was just getting some really easy 3-point looks against the Wizards, and that type of stuff, that's not even a matter of not knowing when to help, not knowing when to switch. That was just dude, these are really simple plays that you're just falling asleep on, basically. So you just can't allow that stuff to happen. But when I look at the actual team, I mean, there's not a whole lot of guys here that I really look at as quality defensive players. John Wall has declined a bit on defense. He's still solid, but I wouldn't consider him super lockdown. Bradley Beal is okay. I look at Beal and I really believe he should be a lockdown defender given how strong the guy is, but I don't know, it just hasn't really happened like that. Otto Porter's okay. Markieff Morris, okay. Marcin Gortat. There's just no one here who I'm just yep, that guy's a really good defender. At one time that could have been Jan Mahimi, but I don't like the way Scott Brooks uses him because he's often playing against the opposing big guy. And a lot of the time, that opposing big dude is someone who has a bit of shooting to them. And Mahimi just has no chance defending those type of guys, you know? And then he can't kill them on the other end by posting up on them or whatever. But if you get Mahimi against a stationary big guy, then he's pretty okay. Mahimi also did get hurt right before the Wizards acquired him, if I remember correctly. But then the other thing is the Scott Brooks lineups, which is a thing that I've talked about a few times in the past. So Brooks, he plays the entire second unit together, and I really don't understand why he does it, because it seems like in 2017, pretty much everyone has accepted that staggering your star players is probably the best way to go, because you always have at least one dude who can initiate offense and create for other guys. And you got two prime candidates here in John Wall and Bradley Beal. You could pick either one of them to play with the second unit and it would work out, I have to assume. But when I was watching that Mavericks game, there was a 5 or 6 minute stretch where the lineup of Tim Frazier, Jody Meeks, Kelly Oubre, Mike Scott and Jan Mahimi. I think that was the lineup. Didn't score at all, which surprises absolutely nobody. And then Brooks put John Wall and Bradley Beal back in the game together, which for that particular situation was the right move, but it's just like, really, dude? You're leaving all of this offensive firepower just on the bench? Now, I understand the rationale of, well, if we can kill you when our starters are in the game, and we can play you to a tie when our second unit is in the game, then overall it's a positive. Yeah, in a perfect world, that would work. But the Wizards' second units are not playing the other team to a tie to allow the starters to break away. And those are the two main problems. Defense, and then not allowing at least one of your stars to play with the bench, to where you go through these moments where you just can't score enough points. I think the rotation that I would go with, the first sub-in that I would make is Kelly Oubre for Markieff Morris. Or honestly, I think I might just start Kelly Oubre at this point, because their best lineup has by far been Oubre at the power forward position with the starters. And I think the revelation with Oubre this season has been his three-point shot, because he's shooting over 40% from outside right now, and you combine that with his ability to be pretty decent in transition and all that, and you got yourself a quality player who can play off of John Wall and Bradley Beal. Although weirdly enough, Oubre is not shooting well at the basket at all right now. He's only shooting 48% at the rim. I assume that'll go up, but the shooting has still been awesome. So maybe I would have Oubre to start the game, bring in Markieff Morris at about, 5-6 minutes in, and then a few more minutes later, I would probably take out maybe John Wall, and I would put in Tim Frazier, because you kind of need Bradley Beal next to Frazier, in my opinion at least, because Frazier is no threat to score whatsoever, but he's a decent playmaker. So if you have him out there and you allow Bradley Beal to help him, then that could be a good thing. And then you bring John Wall in to start the second, and you have most of the bench in there with him. It's a lineup idea that I would like to think works. I mean, you're always going to have to make little changes here and there because it's never going to be perfect. But that's what I would go with, rather than these moments of the entire bench being in the game. But this has been a criticism of Scott Brooks for a while, so I'm not exactly holding my head up that these are adjustments he's going to make. But if he does, awesome, and if he doesn't, well, what are you going to do? We should talk a little bit about how the starting lineup has actually been minus on the season. Again, I think a lot of that is because of Markieff Morris coming back from an injury. I think once he is ready to go, I think that lineup will be fine, because that was one of the better lineups in the NBA last season, as they played 1,300 minutes together, and they were still plus 8 on the season. So while they're like -5 right now, I have to assume that a lineup that was really good last year is still going to be quality this season. Ultimately, do I think the Wizards are anywhere worse than where I thought they would be? I thought they'd be better than 6-5, 11 games in. But I have to assume they'll still be okay. And I have to assume that once Morris is back, and really, back, the starting lineup, whatever they may go with, whether it's Morris or Oubre at the 4, pretty sure it's going to be Morris. You have two really, really good lineups here. But I do think ultimately the things that I don't like, the defense and Scott Brooks' lineups, they may end up killing these guys in the long run anyway, because Scott Brooks has a track record, and it's not exactly the best one.